Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining, but the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. There is nothing like the taste of a real, authentic New England maple syrup. This one is not located in Vermont, though. It's located right in the Berkshires. And I even had the chance to spend a few hours touring and tasting my way through this amazing farm. Justamere Tree Farm is located in the town of Worthington, Massachusetts. The land was purchased in 1982 and owned by JP and Marian. They fell in love with a 26-acre wooded lot with a brook and hunting cabin and farmed the land for over 38 years. The woods became their livelihood, the earth their roots, and the trees their grounding. The farm is newly owned by 3 inspirational women, Kelly, Kim, and Deb. It is now an all-women-owned maple business that runs on clean, renewable energy. I had the pleasure of speaking with Deb, who spent most of her career as a biologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and lived in many places including Connecticut, Maine, and Alaska. She believes that private landowners and sustainable agriculture play an integral role in conservation. That is why she fell in love with Justamere Tree Farm and the ethic behind the business. Her business partner, Kelly, grew up outdoors as a competitive ski and mountain bike racer who is passionate about a life focused on nature and the environment. After spending time in her childhood on a farm in Ohio, Kelly has now returned to her roots. And Kim, their other business partner, grew up riding horses through the fields and forests of rural Alabama. She lived in Alaska for over 20 years, where, among other things, she did backcountry search and rescue with her dog. Her lifelong passion for the outdoors and the beauty of New England drew her to this new adventure. Join me in learning about this special maple forest in the heart of the Berkshires and learn all about Justamere's authentic and unique maple products, some favorites being the maple seasoning, maple hot cocoa, cinnamon maple sugar, and so much more. This is Jen Ross. Welcome to the Agritourist Podcast and enjoy my conversation with Deb, one of the owners of Justamere Tree Farm. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Why don't you tell me a little bit about you and your background? I know this was a farm owned by, I guess, JP and Marian
That's
initially.
Correct. Yep.
So I kind of want to know the backstory of the farm, but let's start with you and get your backstory and kind of what brought you here.
Sure. So I grew up in New England, and it is home for me. But my professional career, I worked almost 25 years. I'm in the process of retiring. I've worked 25 years for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So I am a biologist by training. And I did that because I wanted to make a difference and kind of fix the world. So
you lived in New England, Connecticut? Were you in Connecticut?
I was born in Connecticut and I grew up in Connecticut and Maine.
Okay, excellent. And then do you want to just give me a little bit about Kelly and Kim just so we can round out their back? Because I know they have some interesting backstories.
Sure. So Kelly was born in Ohio and has kind of lived all over. And Kelly and I met in Massachusetts and have been together for almost 30 years. Kim and I met in Alaska. Kelly and I lived in Alaska for 12 years, and I think Kim lived in Alaska for 20 years. Kim grew up in Alabama and went to grad school in Oregon and then moved to Alaska and was also part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And that's how she and I met. And our careers have kind of intertwined, and the three of us are very close friends. And we had always talked about retiring and owning a farm of some type. Kelly grew up in Ohio, went to UMass for grad school where I met her, and she studied as a biochemist and did cancer research and then went to law school, and is still continuing to practice criminal defense, public defense mostly, and running the farm as well.
Wow. Okay. Alaska. Where in Alaska?
For the majority, I went to grad school up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, so that's what brought Kelly and I to Alaska, and that's where I got my my PhD, and then we moved to Anchorage, where I started with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and that's where I met Kim, and then we moved back to Fairbanks for a while.
How'd you like that experience?
It's a wonderful community, right? And I think maybe something that we center upon will be that it's all about community, right? You can live wherever if you have a community.
Then what brought you all back to this area?
Working for the federal government gives you the opportunity to move around, and so I took a job when I was in Alaska to work in Washington, D.C. and worked there for a couple of years. Kim came out to Washington when I was there, and then I took another job up in the Northeast in the Hadley office, and that's how we got to Massachusetts. And Kim moved to Portland, Oregon, and was out there. And then a number of things happened that might actually be happening right now, and so we decided to buy a farm.
How did this happen? How did you find a farm?
Isn't that the craziest thing? So have you watched the movie The Biggest Little Farm?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Isn't it the most delightful fairy tale ever?
Yes.
And I just loved it. And I've seen it a number of times, and I was like, and just the story about healing the land and how everything is working together. And so we watched that 5 years ago in October, Kelly and I, and made Kim watch it. And I said, I want to do that. And so I just did what any good-hearted person would do. I Googled farms for sale. Kelly and I were living in West Hampton, which is a couple towns over from Worthington. Our very good friends lived in Worthington. So we were like, well, there's this thing for sale in Worthington. And I will tell you, none of us had our sights set on a maple farm. And we went out to the farm, and it was just magical. It is just magical. So we fell in love right away. And then a lot of paperwork ensued.
Well, so what was it about the farm? Because I'm sure did you see other farms, other types of farms? No, you didn't. This was just, this jumped out of Google.
Yep. This was it. So it was just, I mean, it was beautiful. It was out in the middle of nowhere. It has a stream running through it. It has a pond. The first thing that JP did was take us down to the stream, and there is like some place that I'm sure at some point had to have been sacred for indigenous cultures. It's just so magical the way the water has shaped those rocks, and it was in this hemlock forest, and that's my favorite habitat. And then we just walked around and looked at the farm, and a week later Kim flew out from Oregon and looked at the farm and was like, oh my God, this is great. And we were having challenges as federal employees. And so we were looking to retire, and Kim could retire early because she had many more years of service than I did. And so we decided that that's what we were going to do and how we were going to buy the farm.
So tell me a little bit about the history of the farm itself.
Sure.
JP and Marian started it, correct?
They did. And it's amazing, right? Because so they started it, I guess, about 32 years ago, and and the main farm is 26 acres, and it was all woods when they bought it. And I can I can tell you from conversations that I've had with both of them is that they both knew that that's what they wanted to do, is to build a life living off the land. And they, transformed all that. They built a house, and they did everything, right? They did everything to survive. He made broom, she made soap, and they had animals here and there, and they settled on maple as the big focus of the farm. They also sold Christmas trees up until the last year that they owned it. And that is a couple that is seriously not afraid of work. They every once in a while come over, and because we'll have questions and things we'll get behind, and we'll ask them to help us and work for us, and they run circles around me.
So I presume they still live in the area?
They do. They love Worthington. Worthington is just a nice little town in the foothills of the Berkshires. It's about 1,200 people, and much of it is farmland and open space, and it's just a beautiful community.
So when you purchased it, you purchased everything, like the house, the land,
The whole thing.
the
Yep.
business, and what was, I guess, so what were they doing with the maple syrup at the time? Is the whole production, everything is on the farm? Does
Yep.
anything get, okay.
So we have about 6,000 taps, 6,500 taps, and we're on the tubing and the vacuum system, so everything happens on the farm. We've expanded, so we now own about 400 acres, and we tap quite a bit of that acreage, and we're looking to expand. Of course, that takes forest management plans and all of that. And so everything comes to the sugar house on the farm. We make our syrup in the spring, and I mean, we're starting earlier and earlier, January, February, March. And we have a commercial kitchen on site, so we do
Nice.
all of the value added products and packaging and everything else on the farm. And we have online store, and we also go to farmers. We go to two farmers markets, and we also go to crafts fairs and sheep and wool festivals, and sell stuff there too.
Where does most of the sales come from? More online or or is it split?
It's almost, I think it's 60/40, so 60% in person and 40% online.
And was that how it was set up with JP and Marian as well? Something similar, or did you guys expand?
We've expanded the number of fairs and festival kind of things that we go to, and the online market has expanded a little bit. We've shipped to every single state in the country.
Congratulations. That's
I know,
great.
it's a big deal. That happened a couple of years ago, and I was like, come on, we only have a couple more to get.
That's terrific. So what, I guess, coming into this business, obviously you guys you have backgrounds that lend itself to not farming in particular, but to biology and, how all this may work behind the scenes. Like, what were some of the surprises, about running this type of business? Like what was like, oh, didn't know that.
Well, I guess the big surprise to anybody farming is, like, no matter what kind of farming, it's like it's never ending, right? Like when you're done with the farming, you're doing the paperwork, or you're doing something else to get set up.
Yeah.
And I think, and also that's not unique to this kind of farming, is it's also the attention to details that can really make a difference either way, right? Like, so whether you're, doing maple and out checking for leaks and making sure your vacuum is really high so you're getting the highest yield, or, you know, doing, you know, creating the actual syrup in the sugar house and paying attention to that. I mean, it's the same if you're growing plants or raising animals, like paying that extra attention to detail makes all of the difference.
Yeah.
And all of the difference in the quality as well.
Absolutely. So just tell me a little bit. So you were saying that the process kind of is starting earlier
Mm-hmm.
these days, and is that because of global warming? Like, how does that, I guess, so just walk me through the process and the timing of the process, because I don't know much about this.
Sure.
And I happen to love maple syrup. I'm vegan, so this is my go-to sweetener,
And
and I
that's
love it.
you asked about surprises. So I did not know before we owned a maple syrup farm that honey's not vegan. So it is like, so it's the best sweetener for you. And it's also, you know, animal and plant friendly. Um, Process. So, you know, traditionally, folks in our region would start tapping maybe late February, and it's about a 6 week season. And so go a little bit, go through March, maybe a little bit into April. Last year we tapped on December 30th because the year before that we didn't tap early and we missed these runs. So in order to get high quality sap, you need a freeze thaw cycle, and so it needs to be below freezing at night and above freezing in the day. Sunny days really help the sap run, and so we're seeing that happen kind of earlier, instead of like this deep January freeze that we used to have in Massachusetts and in New England. We like this deep January freeze and then waiting for that to go out. We're just tapping earlier, so we're not getting that hard freeze. And I think a part of that is not having that hard freeze is responsible for the sugar content of syrup of sap going down. It used to be that sap would come in around 3 or 3.24%, and now we're seeing sap sugar concentrations in sap 2.6, 2.8, like in the beginning when it should be up over 3, and then we're really trying to eke it out when it's down below 2% and like at 1.6. So that is causing some disruption, and just the disruption, I think, too, in precipitation. I mean, we got all our rain early this year, and now we haven't had hardly any rain the last few months, and I don't know what that does to the trees, but it's different, right? And so it has to be a stressor on the trees. And so, also, it wasn't even more. I mean, like 5 years ago, you would have these long runs where the days would be perfect, and you'd just be out there and you'd be making syrup for 10, 15 days, right? One run right after another. So it's less continuous. It's more erratic, the season as well. So it's no longer necessarily a 6 week season. It's trying to eke out getting the same amount of sap over a much longer period of time.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. I wasn't even thinking of that we have had hardly any rain. I'm assuming JP and Marian must have been through different types of climate over the course of 30 something years, and
Sure.
educated you guys on, some of those differences. Yeah. So do the three of you have different roles in the farm, or do you all, and I'm presuming you might have someone takes the lead on something, but obviously you support each other.
Oh, absolutely. So we do support each other. Kim Kim runs the kitchen and is the person that makes all of our great tasting products. That's not to say that Kelly and I don't sometimes stick our nose in the kitchen and help. But Kim is definitely the one that knows everything about the kitchen, and she's also the one that does all the ordering of the supplies. Kelly's the bookkeeper. I do the technology piece of things, and then really it's a full-time job with Kim being in the kitchen, and so Kelly and I often do a lot of the outside work. I was out yesterday repairing a tree came down on lines, and going out and walking those lines and trying to get everything ready. And Kim was in the kitchen making sugar. So we also trade out a little bit too. I mean, we are. Well, that's not to say that I'm capable of doing all the kitchen work, because I'm not even close. So Kim's got a lock on the kitchen work, but we also all trade out, especially when the sap's running and we need to be everywhere all at once. We try to be interdependent, but we do still have our roles. We've sort of naturally gravitated to it. I mean, it's impossible, right? Like, you can't be a master of everything. And so in the beginning, we were like, well, I want to know all the things. And it's great if you can know all the things, but actually you don't need to know all the things, right? You need to know your thing.
Yes, definitely. I actually wanted to go back one question. Is there a certain type of maple tree that you're tapping versus other types? Give me a little bit about that.
Sure. So sugar maples are the trees that we're most looking for tapping, and that's Acer saccharum. That's the scientific name. And then there are also a lot of red maples. They also call them soft maples.
Okay.
They're also called swamp maples. Those are the ones that give you those beautiful, brilliant oranges in the fall generally. Sugar maples can do it too, but when you come across, like if you're in a swamp or a marsh and it's just beautiful orange, those are all red maples. Red maples tend to have lower sugar content in their sap, and so some people find them undesirable. And they bud a little bit earlier in the spring, so they can affect the flavor of your sap if you're integrating them. But we tap everything. We tap both sugar and red maples.
Okay. And these were native to this area?
Yep.
When they
Yes,
purchased the property?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, excellent. And how old are some of these trees?
Oh, we have trees that are that line our road that have to be 150 years or more. They're just those big, old, iconic maples with the really, big round crown.
Tapping a tree does it have any negative effects on the tree?
They haven't been able to demonstrate that it has negative effects on the tree. There is the idea in maple science that the tree makes more sap than it needs, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's a lot of things about compensatory production in biology. And so, but they've done a ton of studies at the University of Vermont and at Cornell, and looking at the amount of sap that a tree produces and how much you can pull out. And they have not found that there is a upper limit of the amount of sap that you can pull out. So there's, I think it's 10 inches in diameter. You can put one tap, and something bigger than that, you can put two taps. But I am also mindful that sometimes we don't appreciate the deleterious effects on things. And so we only put one tap in a tree, no matter the size.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. And you guys are solar powered, or
Yep, we have solar on the property. We're trying to be absolutely as sustainable as possible. So our solar offsets the electricity that we use, particularly during the sugaring season, because that can be pretty intensive. And and then we are a wood-fired evaporator. A lot of the bigger productions, especially like you go up into Vermont and into Canada, and people have 20, 60, 100,000 taps, and that is largely because they can be all automated and they're on oil or propane, and they can set their evaporator to be automated. And we do everything with wood and do it all by hand.
Great. Wow. It's a lot, but it's definitely
It is a lot.
appreciated.
It is a lot, but I think it. I mean, to me, that's part of the craft and that's part of the fun. Like, it's not necessarily fun to push a button and go, look at me, I'm making syrup.
Right.
It's much more fun to be out there and be part of it and taste it as soon as it comes off the evaporator.
So speaking of that, do you bring people on to the farm to get educated or do tours or any type of events
Yeah.
like that?
Sure. I mean, there's certainly places that, do that commercially, and they have a pancake breakfast with the syrup and everything else. And we don't do that, but we have people that come out and look, want to see how everything happens during the sugaring season, and hear, like we're talking about now, right? How maple syrup comes to be, and we're happy to do that. Sometimes we can't always accommodate people, but if people contact us, we do. We do bring people out, and just a warning to folks: making maple syrup is a lot like watching water boil.
I think it's the experience of the property. I mean, I'm sure, people like to learn, and I think the more we can teach them about these things and let them appreciate where these products, are coming, how these products, I mean, people know, we tap trees, but they don't realize what it takes.
Sure.
They don't.
Yep.
The connection's not there. They see it in the jar or the plastic container in the store, but it's really cool when they can see this, see where it comes from. I think it's so important these days, especially.
I think it's so important for people to know where their food comes from and what's in it and the whole thing. And so, yeah, that's one of the things that I'm passionate about, is helping people understand about the choices and the impacts, right, of their choices. And so, yeah, there's a huge difference between the maple syrup that we make and the maple syrup that you can buy in a box store, right? Like, you might be buying all natural, real maple syrup, but there is a very large difference in flavor. And if you want to know why, I can tell you why, but there is.
Tell us.
So
this is important.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, that's why some people are like, I can go and buy a quart at Costco or Walmart, and it is, $12, and yours is $25. Why is that? And one of the things that we are so grateful that we have an outlet is, like, towards the end of the season, you can make off flavor syrup. And there is a market for that. And that goes into this huge repository in which they blend maple syrup. So they bring all different maple syrup from all over, and they blend it, so it tastes like maple syrup, but it doesn't taste as good as any of the small, any of the mom and pop places that are making maple syrup. And there's a huge variety. I mean, it's like anything, right? Like, it's the difference between honey or wine or whatever, whatever it is, right? It's like, because the place has the flavor, that I think it's the terroir, right? But even with maple, I'm convinced that it is.
Yep, I agree, definitely. So you have some interesting, you have obviously maple syrup on your website that people can purchase. I saw some hot maple hot cocoa that definitely interested me. What are some of your favorite products?
So we make a lot of different products, and obviously not all of the ingredients are sourced from our farm. So I think it's important, like, we source all organic, and when we can, local products to make all of our food. The maple cream is 100% maple syrup that is whipped, and so it's like whipped honey. but it is like the spreadable form of maple. And there's other things that you can do with the spreadable
Okay.
form of maple, right? You can put it on apple slices. You can make a maple cream cheese frosting if you mix it with maple, and it's just, and we always tell people it's also delicious on a spoon. Um, we make maple pecan granola that is sweetened only with our maple syrup.
Nice.
Um, we also make maple sugar, and that is one of the things that people are buying a lot more of because it is the healthiest sugar out there for you because it's got some macronutrients and phytonutrients in it, but it also serving per serving is the lowest caloric sweetener out there and the lowest glycemic index. So and so we're selling an awful lot of sugar now, and it also creates like this depth of flavor in what you're cooking. And one of the products that I absolutely love is our maple seasoning. And so that is flavored. That is,
I
it's
saw
a
that.
sweet and a savory product. So it's got paprika, garlic, black and white pepper, sea salt, and then our sugar is used for the sweetness of that. And it's wonderful on both meats and vegetables. And so we've been selling increasingly more of that as well. And that hot chocolate is also sweetened with our sugar and is the organic cacao. And so we call that a superfood.
Nice. Yeah. I love it. No, that the products look great. So definitely going to check that out given my need for, I use maple syrup and everything. Everything. Excellent. So going forward, I know you said you're potentially expanding some acreage. Like
Mhm.
what are your plans for, moving forward? Besides that, are there any plans for new products? Like what is your vision for moving forward? I know that when you were farmers markets and these events can get grueling and tiresome. I mean, it's hard to take, it's harder for, I think, a vegetable farmer who, is harvesting and cleaning. And I used to do that. That's why I know it's a little
Yeah.
different when you have a prepackaged product. But still, it is time consuming to go out to these events. Are there any other plans from a marketing perspective or anything you want to expand into or any kind of festival or anything that you're thinking for the future?
Um, we'd like to try to branch out and make some new products. And as it turns out, is like most of the new products that we want to make involve different machines, like to transform the maple. And so that has been a little bit of a barrier. And also the fact that Kelly and I have been working full time has been a little bit of a barrier to expanding as well. We I think we would ideally like to up our internet sales, our website, and work on some marketing there, and add some of those like the we just really love that sheep and wool festival crowd. They're just a wonderful bunch of folks, and so we really enjoy going to those and selling. And while it is absolutely exhausted, and we can drive home hours without saying a word to one another or to each other because we're just like all talked out. But it's also great like to go to these things and hear people say, I love your product, and
Yeah.
taste it for the first time and go, oh my God, and ask questions. Like it's just wonderful to go out there and talk to people and sort of change hearts and minds one person at a time
It
as
is.
well. So
It
um
is.
we've got some forest management plans in the works, some thinning and some forest stand improvements. We're very committed to wildlife habitat first, and so we're trying to do some property improvement there with some forest stand improvement plans and see about how do we integrate more maple into that. But other than that, I'm not really sure where we're going with that. Like I'm all over the place. I saw on your website about like educating children, and I'm like, oh my God, I'd love to have a kids group come out to the farm and like teach them about stuff. And I've done that here and there in my career, and it's so gratifying, and I'd love to do that. And I'm not in a space right now where I've really thought about that in a thoughtful manner about how I would implement that.
It's always an opportunity, you know. I mean,
Yes.
you guys
Yeah.
have a lot going on, and I commend you for taking this leap. That's pretty cool. One last question for you. The Berkshires in general, do you feel like what, I mean, I don't know how often you came there before you found this one farm,
Hmm.
but did you know much about the Berkshires? You know, what what do you appreciate about the area in general? Do you, you know, like, you know, just tell me about your perspective of the Berkshires in general.
Well, I think first and foremost is what most people appreciate about the Berkshires is just the natural beauty of it, right? And still, I mean, I think there's this perception that New England is this really crowded place, and there are times when it's really crowded, but for the most part you can get away from people if that's what you want to do, but you can also come together. And I mean, there's just the towns in the Berkshires are just, all of them have so much to offer and contribute, and none of them are the same, and yet you can find little pockets where you can appreciate everything. I think, there's a large artistic part of the community in the Berkshires. And so, if you're, no matter what kind of art you're looking for, like, I think it's there and available. And, I'm just attracted to the community that are the towns that are in the Berkshires and the surrounding towns. I
Right.
just think it's a really nice community that the people that are there appreciate that they are there and able to be there, and they're just really good people.
And have there been any organizations locally that have helped you or been very supportive of this endeavor?
Yeah, Berkshire Grown has been great, and Berkshires and the Great Barrington Farmers Market has been awesome. And we've gotten small grants from the Grinspoon organization. They're not necessarily in the Berkshires. They're, I think, centered in Springfield, but they've been really supportive of small farmers. And then we've had Lindsay Sabadosa is our representative, and Paul Mark is our other one, and they represent agriculture so well. And I think just also in general, like, I always say that there's two different Massachusetts is two different states because it's very different on the east than it is the west. But I would also say that our state legislature does appreciate the ruralness and the agricultural contribution that happens a lot in the West. I mean, it happens in the Central Valley, absolutely, but we have good representation for agriculture in Massachusetts as well.
Excellent.
A good support
Well,
system.
that's important. It really is because
Yeah.
we don't have that as much down here on Long Island. I was talking to Rebecca from Berkshire Ag Ventures. Is that the
Uh-huh.
name of the
Yeah.
organization? And
Hmm.
I would like just her organization or what she runs. I'm like, if I wish that existed, some semblance of that existed down here because the focus is on retail and commercial property
Hmm.
builds. And there's just where I live in particular, more out east, they're trying to preserve some land and there are farms, but even there, the focus is on building. And these farms are just disappearing left and right.
Hmm.
And it's just sad. It's hard.
It is. And
It's hard.
when we do that, people lose that connection, right? And so I think it's 35 years ago, I used to spend a lot of time on Long Island, and certainly the East Fork was a lot different than Am I getting that right?
The North and South Fork.
North
Yes.
Shore and South Shore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like, it was two different worlds, right? It's like you had all the people in the South Shore, and then you went up to the North Shore, and it was like, well, look at this. This is a whole different place with farms and
Yeah.
everything else. And
Although it's now it's a lot of vineyards, but
yeah.
it's like one road in, one road out, and it's tough.
Yeah.
It's different. I mean, South Shore, you have the Hamptons and stuff, but it's so built up out there.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the farms are disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, and where I live, I was farming at a small local farm where the property was sold. It can't be developed, basically. But that was the only thing out here. And it's just really sad. So it's nice when I see an environment like this, and not just farms, but there's organizations supporting the health of farms and the future of farming. It's just really, I love seeing that. So I was like, I really, it's really great to see. So you guys have a good support system.
We do. And I mean, it's hard to see because there are a number of young folks that want to get into farming. I would have never been able to do this if we all hadn't had a career beforehand, right? Like we wouldn't be here if we wanted to start off and be farmers, and it's impossible. And, there's great people. Jane Iredale is one of the sponsors of the Great Barrington Farmers Market, and she's just been wonderful to all the farmers there. And it takes people like her and everybody else to help young farmers farm.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I learned so much. I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time. As we are learning from many of our farmers and entrepreneurs, strong connections help propel our visions. Through my interview with Lisa Chase from the University of Vermont Extension and Vermont Tourism Research Center, I was connected to an exciting and new organization called the Global Agritourism Network, or GAN for short. The Global Network is made up of agritourism stakeholders from around the world. They include farmers and ranchers, researchers, educators, community planners, policymakers, agricultural service providers, and tour operators, among others. It is currently free to join, so if you have any interest in agritourism, check them out at agritourism.edu/GAN, or just Google Global Agritourism Network. The link will be in our show notes as well. You never know, this global network may help you take your agritourism vision to the next level.